Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good day. Welcome to our Big Book 12-Step Workshop. The set-aside prayer is up. For an open mind and an open heart, please join me. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my unmanageability, the 12 steps in you, for an open mind and a new experience with myself, my unmanageability, the 12 steps, and especially you. Please join me in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. We've spent a long time on step 4. We're about to conclude it tonight. In terms of the instructions, please have the perspective of this is your personal journey. Yes, you're attending a weekly workshop. Yes, there are weekly assignments. Yes, there are discussions about those weekly assignments. All that's true and will remain true for the balance of the time together. As I mentioned, I'm extending the workshop to mid-December because I think we'll need that time. Tonight, I'm giving you the assignment of moving ahead for next week. Next Tuesday, we will take a look at assignment 18, step 5. It's a reading assignment. Page 72 to 75, I believe. 3 pages. It would behoove you to read the 12 and 12, probably 10 pages. Not critical, not necessary, but nice to do. And if you don't do it for next week, do it for the following week. That's it. Read and highlight the material in the big book on step 5. Then next week, Tuesday, I will be unpacking that line by line. There's a lot of information there, and I have a lot of knowledge and experience outside of the big book that will help fill in what I consider to be making it a very powerful, therapeutic, and healing experience, the 5th step. For next week, next Tuesday. Tonight, we're rounding the corner, finishing step 4, by looking at the final pages, 70 and 71 in the big book. Bill brings it to conclusion. And I'm going to look at that, and then I'm going to give you my own expanded version, like I do with most of the big book, from my knowledge and my experience of how to, I believe, bring the 4th step preparation to a really good conclusion. The big book is really good, and Bill knew that it was really good, but he also said, we know only a little, more will be revealed. And that's certainly been my experience, and now hopefully at least your exposure, maybe your experience, in terms of the way we approach column 3 and column 4 in the resentment inventory. The work that I gave you as an assignment, the work that most of you did, I mean, we've spent a lot of time sharing the work that you did. It's been wonderfully robust, penetrating, deep, not just in the conscious, but in the unconscious. I hope you've appreciated that. The dynamic of the dialogue between the people. I'm not a therapist, I'm not clinically trained, and I'm not certified or degreed in anything, but I have a lot of experience in asking helpful questions. I was thinking about that today. I hope I don't cross the line and create any pretense that I have any professional or therapeutic credentials, because I don't. But I really want to help, and I have a lot of experience, and those questions in that process is meant to help. Step 4 is the beginning of the turnaround. For me, it was the major beginning of the turnaround. I had my first spiritual awakening during the work I did on column 4 of the resentment inventory. The change was simple to explain, painful to experience, and I didn't know that it was happening when it was happening. I just did the work of the assignment and met with this man who guided me through the steps and got better and clearer as I processed with him my column 4s. After I finished the work, when I looked back over my shoulder, one of those times when you're in a meditation you're doing a retrospect. In 1989, I was looking at the journey and realized that was exactly the place that my spiritual awakening began, because the turning was from being a victim to being 100% responsible for my life. You've heard me talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it in detail. But that was the beginning of my becoming an adult. That was my beginning of taking 100% responsibility. I really encourage you to have a plan to finish your 3rd and 4th column, no matter how you do it. You can't do it wrong unless you don't do it. You will get some benefit from it if you do it. Next year, you might get more benefit. 5 years from now, you certainly will get more benefit. But live in the moment, live in the present moment. Have a plan. If you have 10 resentments and you want to finish 10, finish them. If you have 20, finish them. If you have more than 20, I really encourage you to select out the 10 key substantive ones. I don't mean the 3 or 4 on your father and the 3 or 4 on your mother as counting toward the 10 or 20. All of the column 3, column 4s that you're going to do on your mother is one experience to count against the 10 or 20. All of the resentments that you have toward your father, toward your spouse, toward your ex-partner, each one as a whole counts against the 10 or the 20. And I'm using the parameters very intentionally. I assume that most of you have more than 10. Some of you have more than 20. But if you do 10 and you do 1 to 3 resentments on each of those 10, you will have 30 worksheets. That's more than enough to see the pattern, to see the truth. If you want to and need to, for whatever reason, sponsor direction or your own answer to prayer, do up to 20, well, do that. It's a confirmation of, and perhaps even a clarification of, the pattern. And you may not even realize it as you're doing it. It may not have as much power today as it will 6 months from now, after you finish perhaps your 9th step. 6 months from now, being in next year. We're going to end this workshop in mid-December, but that doesn't mean your work ends. It continues until you're finished your 9th step in this particular series that you're doing. The same with the fear inventory. Identical words. The same with the sex inventory. Identical words. Up to 10 or 20 fears, up to 10 or 20 sex-specific situations or relationships. You might have done multiple worksheets on one relationship, maybe because it was a long-term relationship and you did it over segments of time. I did that. It was very helpful. If you haven't finished your fourth step, have a plan to finish it. And the plan isn't, I'm going to finish my fourth step. No, that's a commitment. That's a vision. That's a mission. Lots of words for it, but it's not a plan. When I say plan, think blueprint. An architect doesn't say, I'm going to build a house and then build it. No, sits down for hours with the owner, unless he's the owner, of course, or she's the owner, and they draw out very specific, where are the electrical plugs? Where are the toilets going to be put? Where are the pipes underneath, and et cetera, et cetera? I mean, be specific with, that's a plan. I'm going to work an hour a day or 15 minutes. I'm going to work an hour a week. I'm going to save half of Saturday. I'm going to save half of Wednesday, depending on your own personal, certainly productive schedule, when you're most awake and most capable of paying attention, as well as your own life circumstances. Be realistic about it. But take a look at a calendar, whether you keep one currently or not. Look at a calendar for September and October and November and December, and plan when you're going to do this work. Make an appointment with yourself on that calendar. If you don't have one, just make one. A calendar for each month as to the level of the work that you're going to do so that you can finish your fourth, and I recommend your fifth step, by the end of the year. What a gift that would be. Because if you finish the fifth step by the end of the year, you will finish the sixth and seventh step by the end of the year. I'll talk more about that when I've unpacked 6 and 7, but you'll see that it will go very quickly. And then you'll be in your 8th step, which is making a list. And then once you're satisfied with the list, with a conversation with your step guide and or your sponsor, then you'll begin making your amends. And that might take a year or two. I don't believe it'll take any less than 6 months, depending on how many amends you have to make. And it certainly shouldn't take, I'm really encouraging you, more than 2 years to finish your amends. And that's giving a lot of margin, a lot of lateral time. But it's my experience. I'm not coming at this academically. I'm not coming at it from the instructions in the big book. I'm coming solely from my own personal experience. My personal experience with my own work, but my personal experience with the work of the people in the workshop. All right, so on page 70, Bill finishes the instructions on the sex inventory in the paragraph to sum up about sex. We did that last week. He continues, if we have been thorough about our personal inventory, all right, thorough, please, you perfectionists. He's not saying perfect. Sure, it's untidy. Sure, there's some details left out. Sure, there's some of the story that hasn't been written. It might come out in the fifth step if it comes to your consciousness and or is important. But it's enough. What you have done and what you will do is enough this time. The very first fourth step I did in my first year of recovery was very shallow, superficial. I didn't know that. It was the best I could do. I followed the suggestions of my sponsor, who said, write out your autobiography, which I did. And I read it in my fifth step. That fifth step took 3 hours. My subsequent fifth steps, my first fifth step out of the big book took 10 hours. My second one took 8 hours. My third one took about 4 hours. Notice the trend here. Sure, because there's less material. And the fourth time I went through the workshop, through the work, was 2003, and it probably took a couple hours. A definite sign that I was making progress, improving my consciousness, and therefore improving my behavior. If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. That's why I recommend people get up some type of a file folder or a binder. I really like a 2 or 3 ring binder so that things are in there and they can be moved around, but it's a sense of order so that when I go to do my fifth step, things are pretty well organized. We'll talk more about that in a minute. We have listed and analyzed our resentments. Oh boy, did we ever. Listed, column 1 and 2, analyzed, column 3 and 4. Bill uses the word. This is an analytical process. We have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality, column 3, and the in-between instructions on pages 66 and 67 about the prayer for the removal of deep resentment. Now, this is Bill's sort of summary wrap-up, a retrospect as he's looking back over his shoulder over the suggestions he's given us on step 4 in the big book. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all people, even our enemies, for we look on them as sick people. Well, you know what he's referring to, that prayer for the removal of deep resentment, that change of attitude. They're sick. That's easy for us to judge them. But the very next comment in that material is, and we, like them, are sick too. Uh-oh. We're just like them, he says in the big book. That was the change in attitude. We're not judging them from a high vista of perfection. We're evaluating them eyeball to eyeball because we're the same. We've done the same. Or in fact, some of our resentments we discovered were projections of what we thought and did and felt onto them. And they, in fact, never did that kind of harm to us that we had estimated. Fancied or real, we asked ourselves. We have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct, column 4, and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. That signal that includes the 8th step and the 9th step, which he refers to when we get to step 8. I've mentioned that in the structure, in the construction of column 4. Questions number 6 and 7, which I really avoided us having any commentary on other than their parking spots for possible harm that we've done to them, the person with whom we have the resentment, or collateral damage for people around them. Questions 6 and 7 will be addressed when we get to step 8, because step 8 says in the big book, we made a list of people that we harmed. We did so when we took inventory. The organic nature of the instructions, very tidy in Bill's mind. Page 70 continues. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We could really, blast by that without much impression. So let's pause. What is Bill saying to us? Steps 2 and 3 are an act of faith. Our sense of prayer and meditation, our sense of spirituality, our sense of powerlessness. Those are all awarenesses and words that we use, but stop for a minute. Pause for a minute. Faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. Not only did it reveal to us in resentment, fear, and sex our misfires, our mistakes, but it also gave us instructions as to how to get rid of resentments and fear and sex. Every one of those sections indicated that prayer might be the final tool. Sure, you can list it, name it, describe it, identify it, analyze it, talk about it. Absolutely, absolutely. But when in fact it's so deeply entrenched, Bill says resentment, we're as powerless over that on page 66. We're as powerless over our resentments as we are over our addiction. Implication, having no power, no choice at all. He implies it in the fear inventory. The final suggestion is pray for the removal of fear. He's less expansive, but again, he returns to being expansive in the sex inventory. Is that not only do we pray for the ideal, because we can't achieve it on our own, we can't see the truth, but once we craft the sex ideal, we pray to have the power and the strength to live up to it. Because we're as powerless over our sexual concept or theory or principle as we are over our addiction, but more especially says we're as powerless over our behavior in alignment with our sex ideal as we are over our addiction. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. That's how I defined spiritual awakening, didn't I? Right at the beginning, the second workshop that we had, we unpacked Appendix 2. Spiritual awakening, what is it? What is it, a spiritual awakening? How does it differ from a spiritual experience? And how is it the same? And I defined it as a change. That's it. That's it. Both are the same, a change. The time frame is different, but the essence of it, the product of it, the promise of it is the same. A change. A radical change. I'll add that word. A radical change at the root level. A change in the way we think and feel and behave. All of the components that make us specifically human. How we think with our mind, how we feel with our emotion, how we behave out of our brainstem instinctual functioning. There's a transformation, there's a conversion, there's a turning, there's a change. All of us have had a commitment to, an exposure for, an effort at self-help in some form. Therapy or religion, two major forms, but self-help seminars and classes and trainings and et cetera, et cetera. But this work takes us across the goal line. You may have experienced some of that change already, but some of you are sitting there saying, well, you know, I hear people discuss it, but I haven't had those kinds of experiences yet. It's okay, be patient. Bill says here on page 71, we hope you are convinced that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. Notice the term self-will is the overarching inclusive term to include resentment and fear and sex. And I'm going to talk about dishonesty in a minute. He doesn't mention as much. He certainly doesn't mention it as a separate category, but I do. And I talked about this image, this metaphor, this mental picture to make it easy for ourselves, that in steps 2 and 3, we saw and maybe even decided that we have a sunlight of the spirit deep down inside ourselves. It's a great picture. The sunlight of the spirit deep down inside ourselves. We have that. It's existential, meaning that it's a actual, I don't want to use the word, I mean, we'll use the word metaphysical, beyond the physical. Meta means beyond. But it's an organic part of our structure. Bill said God is or God isn't, God is everything or God is nothing. We're in constant contact. That's the implication. At the existential, meaning at the organic, real level, that this is the life force that is the source of our own life force. I use the term constant contact. But we need to wake up to that, and that was the process. Pain drove us into the program and through step 1, so that we reached out in desperation of powerlessness for power. And in steps 2 and 3, we made that decision, a faith decision, though. Faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. Faith is that decision. God is, I hope. God is, I will act as if it's true. That's what faith is. The decision, the acceptance of the decision, and the acting as if it's true, the trust that we talked about in the step 2 and step 3 work that we did. We hope you are convinced here at the end of the 4th step. He is suggesting that you might have had some experience of identifying and getting some relief from these sources that block us from this sunlight of the spirit. I use the word cloud for resentment and fear and dishonesty and our unfortunate, unhealthy sexual behavior. No judgment here, no negativity here. We're just observing the truth, observing the facts. Are you convinced that this power in you can remove, dissipate these clouds, this darkness that prevents you from having an effective relationship with the light? I've been using that a lot in the last year or two, especially in this workshop. The contrast between darkness and light, it just so corresponds to the awakening and asleep comments. If you have already made, page 71, if you have already made a decision, well, that's step 3. Oh yeah, and it's also step 2. But Bill's intention, because it's in the step itself, it's embedded in the instructions in chapter 4 for step 2. It's embedded in the instructions, God is or God isn't, what is your choice? But that needs to be unpacked in the way we did it. It's not as clear from the big book as step 3 is, because it's right in the step itself. Made a decision to turn. Well, that couldn't be any clearer. If you have already made a decision, that is that commitment, that is step 3, and an inventory of your grosser handicaps. Oh, I sure wish you would have said grosser handicaps at the beginning of the process and the suggestions. That would have been nice. it would have certainly reinforced my comments that we're looking for white shark, not minnows. But here it is, and that's why I use that myself up front. Grosser handicaps. I had to deal with very gross darkness in 1988, 4 years sober. Even though I was 4 years sober and I had, by my standards and my sponsor's standards, a good program. I went to a meeting every day. I called my sponsor every day. I got progressively transparent and more honest every day. But I was not living by principles. I mean, I was transgressing major principles of civilized behavior, not just of a spiritual person, but of a civilized person. I've indicated some of that to you as we've unpacked the fourth step. Gross misbehavior, 4 years sober. No subsequent inventory dealt with gross. They dealt with subtle transgressions on principles. Nevertheless, transgressions out of alignment that created darkness and created my suffering and the suffering of other people. If you have already made a decision, taken the third step, all of you have done that. We did it publicly here, actually. And an inventory of your grosser handicaps, you will finish your fourth step. And my prayer is, and my plea is for you to make a commitment to do that by the end of the year. Oh, earlier if you can, certainly. But there's no rush here. No artificial rush. Lean gently into it. It's your process. And if you have to carry it over to next year, please do that for whatever reason. You don't have to explain it to anybody, and you don't have to defend it to anybody. It might take you another year to do the step work. I know people have come to my workshop 3 and 4 and 5 years in a row in order to finish their fourth step. So I just had that awareness now that I certainly didn't want to crowd any of you into an artificial time frame at all. If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grocery handicaps, you have made a good beginning. Oh my God, a good beginning. Yep, but that's it. We're in it forever. He says in step 10, it's a lifetime journey. That's why we have step 10 when they crop up. Lifetime. But this is a really good, solid beginning, as it was for me. That being so, you have swallowed and digested. You've observed, you've uncovered, you've discovered, and you're about to disclose it. And digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. Yeah. Okay. So in the Way of Life document, I have a summary of the instructions for completing the fourth step. I'm going to read it. You hopefully have already read it. Maybe you've highlighted it, but I'm just going to read it because it might prompt some comments that would be helpful and some questions that will be helpful. Remember, the purpose of this process to identify and remove or have removed, that's not subtle. This is a therapeutic process. This is a human psychological process. By naming it, by analyzing it, by reviewing it with sponsors, even before you do the fifth step, you may eliminate a whole bunch of stuff in your life. At the same time, Bill says, if that doesn't work, to your satisfaction, meaning the removal of the tension from resentment and fear and sex and dishonesty, that you pray for it and it will be removed. My journey is the willingness to take action as well as to receive grace for healing. To identify and remove or have removed the impediments or obstacles to a relationship with that power deep down inside us. That's all steps 2 and 3. That was our insight and our experience and our commitment. Then I say, ask yourself where and when you have experienced, and this is really, if you have not done a 4th step before, and you're doing it for the first time, it's kind of a radar sweep to pick up anything that hasn't been already picked up in the prior suggested actions and questions. But even if you have done it, this is a radar to take a look at the words that are not in the big book, guilt and shame. Big book written in 1939, it hasn't been changed in any substantive way. Guilt and shame were not prominent words in the in the culture, let alone in the big book. Guilt, that unhealthy feeling that I have, that negative feeling that I have about my behavior. There's healthy guilt, but unfortunately, there's a lot of unhealthy guilt. And some cultures and family of origins are really expert in transferring unhealthy guilt. Shame is very different. Guilt is about behavior. Shame is about my very self, that low self-esteem that many of you revealed in your work with the inventory process. That sense of lacking of value, or that hole, that invisibility that many of you feel, that lack of worthiness. That's unhealthy shame. Unhealthy. There's a healthy shame. We've talked about that before. But shame is about who I am as a person, who I am as a human being. Embarrassment. That's a word I have not used, I don't believe, in our entire time together on the 4th step. Do you have any negative sense of embarrassment? Whether that's about circumstances or people or about yourself. Dishonesty is a big deal for me because it was the heart of my character defect. I didn't know it until I did this work, despite all the learning I had about psychology and all the experience I had with therapy. I did not know that at my core of cores, my default character defect was freeze, hiding, camouflage, dishonesty. Oh, I had the anger and I had the fear, but they weren't as predominant as it turned out to be the shame. Shame, I didn't even put it in the category of a feeling. But it was after I did this work and was talking to a good friend of mine who does a lot of work in personality theory. And we'll talk more about that when we get to 6 and 7. And she was the one that helped me understand, after several weeks and months of discussion with her, that shame is an experience of a feeling. And dishonesty was my default position, that chameleon. If I was in a green environment, I turned green. If I was in a blue environment, I turned blue because I wanted to fit in. And I would misrepresent myself in order to fit in, under or over, or in any way possible. The man who took me through the work, and I know I've mentioned this many times, in 1988, that first time, his whole journey had been exploded at 16 years of sobriety because he had kept a secret in his first year and he drank in his 16th year. At least that's his interpretation of the reason for his relapse. He kept a secret from when he was a teenager, didn't feel it was anybody's business, and never revealed it to anybody. And after 16 years of really strong and vital recovery, he relapsed with no thought at all, that strange mental blank spot that Fred talked about. And after he did finally get sober after 5 years of a struggle, it was his conclusion that he kept the secret in his first year. And in his 16th year, that secret finally metastasized to the level that he had the black cloud that blocked the sunlight of the spirit, and he drank again with no thought at all, no resistance at all. Pretty amazing. But I'm saying that was his orientation. So those were constant conversations we had throughout the entire fourth step process, as I think I've attempted to do with you. Even if you have a secret that you've talked about in therapy or with an attorney or with a sponsor and or with a friend, if you have a secret over which you still have some negative tension, I don't mean memory, I mean feeling, negative feeling, tension from the secret, it needs to be looked at and talked about again. And then I throw in kind of a bucket of things here. Irresponsibility from finances, irresponsibility with relationships, irresponsibility with behavior, irresponsibility with family, irresponsibility with work. Because we're very immature, at least if this is your first time doing this work, whether you're newly sober or a long time abstinent, it doesn't matter. If this is your first time doing this work, you probably need to address the immaturity that comes from that irresponsibility of not having taken responsibility. As I mentioned at the beginning of the fourth step process in one of the PowerPoints, and it's in the Way of Life document, there are 7 capital sins that Bill mentions in the 12 and 12. He doesn't mention it in the big book. He probably didn't know about it in 1939. But in 1940, he engaged as his spiritual director, a Catholic Jesuit priest, for the reason that this was a very educated and deeply spiritual and humble man who came to Bill and said in 1940, I just read your book about alcohol. I have a food problem. Maybe it'll work for me. Father Ed Dowling was seriously overweight and compulsive with regard to his food. I actually don't know whether that worked for him or not. I have his biography now. I'll be reading it before the end of the year. So next year I'll know the answer to that question. But the point is that he had enough astuteness to see in the book and the process for alcohol that it might be a suggested step process for success with his food addiction. He's a Catholic Jesuit priest, which means that he's trained theologically to use these terms with regard to sin. All right. Bill doesn't use the word sin in the big book, but the Catholics are big on sin. All right. Mortal sin, venial sins, and they got a whole list of other ones. And the source is these 7 capital sins, they call. I don't use this model. Probably I had an aversion to it because of my own background in the Catholic tradition. I just didn't find it useful or helpful. But since it's in the 12 and 12, I bring it to your attention. Don't overlook it. If you have any connection to those words, and if you don't know what they mean, look them up. Sloth, for instance. It's about laziness. Indolence would be a synonym for that. After praying to set aside prayer, spend time reflecting in meditation, I'm clear here, on each of these items. And write out your thoughts, feelings, and memories. Be specific. It is especially important to be specific about any area or item that you have any conscious or intuitive awareness of discomfort. I hope you're hearing the spirit of this. This is not to be perfect. Please, you gnat strainers. All right, gnat, G-N-A-T, mosquitoes, gnats. All right, we're not straining gnats. We're grosser handicaps. It is especially important to be specific about any area that you have conscious or intuitive. Really rely on that heart and that gut, that felt sense of discomfort, whether it's in your head and clear or not. Embarrassment or resistance to disclosure. That would be really relevant to secret. Oh, they don't need to know anything. Oh, I've talked about, yeah, maybe not. Even though you've had it in your inventory before, if you still have any negative valence energy, any negative energy, how free do you want to be? I'm not asking you to be perfect, clearly. The big book says progress, not perfection. But at the same time, and that's why experienced sponsors are really important, or step guides, both. So they can help you have common sense with regard to navigating what I'm talking about. How free do you want to be? Well, you can only put down what you're conscious of. Three years after I did the work in 1988, I was more conscious because I had a daily meditation practice at that time. So I had a very voluminous step 4, as I said, it was an 8-hour 5th step. Err on the side of maximizing rather than minimizing. I'm on dangerous and thin ice with you perfectionists when I say that. All right, but I mean it. Err on the side of maximizing rather than minimizing. This is about rigorous honesty, about being transparent. Oh, I love that. Transparent. It's a word I chose very carefully, consciously. The outsides and the insides match. There's no veil. There's no shade. There's no gauze. We're not defending ourselves. That's another word I love. You'll hear it more when we come to the 6 and 7. To live undefended. That's freedom. To live undefended. This is about removing the sludge in us that blocks us from God. So the bottom line is the bottom line here. That's why I call this work the roto-rooter, a plumbing term for removing the caca from the drain. This is about removing the sludge in us that blocks us from God. This is about removing and dissipating and eliminating the darkness by shining the light on it, which takes us to the 5th step. And we'll be talking about that next week. Let me see if I have any other notes on this. Yeah, this is about freedom, not comfort. As experienced as I am with giving a 5th step and the therapeutic process and confession, I have never once enjoyed doing a 5th step. Talking about all of the cracks, all of the wounds, all of the deficiencies, all of the mischief. I'll be kind. But it's a prayerful process. And the book, I don't have to look at it. The book says God will remove. And that was the message in each of the components of the step 4 inventory. In the final analysis, we pray for the removal. When we get to 6 and 7, I'll add to that something that's not in the big book, but it's something that comes from my experience to achieve freedom. Freedom from your character defects. We all have buttons until we don't. And this is a soul surgical process that removes the buttons eventually, not just step 4. Step 4 identifies the buttons. Step 5 makes them very real. Step 6 and 7 really is the final minor major surgery that removes the buttons. And then the healing process takes place with 8 and 9. The healing takes place with 8 and 9. Because you've made a commitment to change, and that's part of the 8th step. And you're going out publicly to address the change and to repair the damage. And that's when the healing, that's when the forgiveness comes to full closure. That's wonderfully my experience. Not quickly, but eventually. And I think by the time you finish the 9th step, the words that I'm talking about today will have such depth of meaning for you. Today, they might be black and white. When you finish your 9th step, and if you have the time and interest to listen to any part of the material from 4 through 9, it will go from black and white to Technicolor because you will have had experience with it. And the promises will have been manifest, and you will have had an experience with it, and you will be very conscious and be able to calibrate and talk about the radical change that you've experienced. All right. So that's the 4th step. We're moving on next week, Tuesday, to the 5th step. And now let's talk about not the 5th step, but any part of the 4th step that you want to talk about, especially questions or concerns or clarifications with regard to the conclusion suggestions that I've talked about today, or that are in the Way of Life document.
I wanted to ask about, like, a lot of, I know that through my behavior before any recovery, I used to behave in a way that is very self-destructive.
Yeah.
And like sabotaging myself, or going to an interview without preparation, or like things that I know would hurt me. So I just want to see, where in the scheme of things, is this selfishness? Is this self-bondage? Like, where does it go, that type of behavior?
Well, wonderful question. Creative, out of the box. I don't know the answer, other than I would say, if it doesn't fit any of the vocabulary that we used so far, then it doesn't matter what you call it, but write about this concern and this discomfort and this question that you have about your thoughts and your feelings, and especially the behavior that you had, and you said it, that was self-sabotaging or undermining the quality of your life. That would be a phrase I would like to use. I might incorporate it, actually. Anything that undermines the quality of my life. Yeah, I like it very much. Yeah.
Great.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does very much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's usually stems from fear and resentment. It's a reaction to that. But
it's again, it takes it from black and white and makes it Technicolor.
Okay. Yes. All right.
Yeah. No, because it makes it specific to you.
Right.
Yeah. No, I'm very much supporting expanding it for you in this area, and anybody else who identifies with something similar to it. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
I have a question, and then if you don't mind, I'd like some help on a column 3 and 4. Is that all right?
Sure.
The question that I had was, actually, it's a twofold question. It's about step guides and choosing a step guide.
Yes.
Do you need a step guide all the way through? I recently reached out for a step guide because I found myself procrastinating. This work is getting so emotionally draining that I'm finding myself stalling. And so I said, okay, I got to get an accountability partner.
That's
And
right.
then I started calling a couple of people, and they're so different. And some have experience and some don't have experience. And I don't know how to choose one. What's
Yeah.
your wisdom on that?
Well, and it's a difficult selection because you don't probably, if you're looking at a list, you don't know the people. And in a way, you may not even know how to interview the person to determine whether they have the kind of experience that you need and want. My sense is if they're on the list, that they're probably qualified in some way to help you with any of the steps, because the only people that were asked to register on the list, we didn't interview them, we didn't vet it, but the criteria was that you've done the steps out of the big book, whether it's with my workshops or somebody else who is familiar enough with the big book to give you an interpretation of the suggestions, but it's all self-determined. So it's really about interviewing them to find out what experience they have with the step 4 inventory, if that's your experience, and or as an accountability partner in terms of going through the steps, what their experience is with that and what their requirements are, if they have requirements for a relationship of step guide versus sponsor. We're not looking at sponsors right now, right? We're looking
Right.
yeah. And so, and then take it on with the mindset. You might even say this, let's try it for a couple of weeks or a month and see if it's a fit for us. If in fact you have a sense that you're resonating with the person in a way that you find they articulate in a way that you can hear, and that they listen to you and can hear how you articulate. Those are the key items that you can communicate well. There are some people that are more parental, if you will, or more disciplinary in the way, or rigid or black and white. And some people like and need that, and some people don't. So you'd have it's like an interview of anybody. It's about, do they have the knowledge, do they have the experience, and do they have the kind of personality that fits with you? I do recommend that women work with women and men work with men on a men work with men on a general basis. But of course, there's always exceptions to that, where there are successful connections based on an interview or a referral.
Okay, I like the idea of trying it out first, because I don't know what I'm doing either. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm new, so
yeah. Oh, and then there's a second part of your question.
Yeah.
And that is, I believe you clearly need it in the 4th step more than any other area. And then either good sponsorship or step guide in step 8 and 9. But 8 and 9 are even more critical, that you have experienced people. Knowledgeable is good. It might be a sponsor, but the experience is critical. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the 8th and 9th step.
The reason I wanted help with this one is I found that I ended up kind of schizophrenic as I was doing it. I found 2 competing things, and I wanted to figure out what the real one was.
All right.
This is a resentment. This one's my husband, Jerry. And it's when I resent Jerry for being disorganized, forgetful, indecisive, and unmotivated, did it hurt, threaten, or interfere with my self-esteem? And I put, I'm a highly responsible, organized, intelligent, decisive, responsible woman who takes care of everyone and everything. I deserve to be taken care of too. And the fear was, I will never be taken care of. I seem to choose men who need me desperately. I don't know where that came from, but and then for pride, I got others should see Jerry treating me with reverence and gratitude, in awe of my ability to be so decisive, organized, to manage the household with ease, appreciative of me taking on the extra burden, yielding, submissive, contrite, bragging to others about how I take charge, my abilities to handle everything. And then something else came up in me. It was more like, I want to be taken care of.
Yeah.
It's like I was raised to be this independent, self-sufficient woman, and here's this Victorian person sneaking out. It was
Yeah.
almost embarrassing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
your fear is?
my fear is if he didn't depend on me so much, he might leave, or I will never. And the schizophrenic side said, I'll never find anyone who will be able to take care of me for a change.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, excellent. I think we've got a good feel for it. Move over now to the fourth column. And what is your perceived role?
Perceived role is overburdened, over-responsible wife, over-functioning. Always being more responsible, taking on more responsibility, being, kind of trapped or taken advantage of. That keeps sneaking in there too. Being so good at everything that I get piled with everything, and then I can't escape it, and I'm resentful and feeling.
Well, I like the crispness. Well, first of all, overburdened and over-responsible might work, but when you said I'm a trapped woman, that was really that was really crisp.
That keeps coming up.
Yes, it does. Yeah. I love to be independent, but I want it to be in a larger context of being safe and taken care of.
Okay.
Well, I don't know that, but
no, I think I struggle with that. I mean, my bent, is based on, my mother driving into me, never need a man, always be independent, and then I find out at 23 that her boyfriend of 20 years is her married sugar daddy, and she's been dependent on a guy her whole life, and I never knew. It's like, talk about betrayal. So but anyway, so yeah, so I've got these.
When you let's go though with the trapped woman, because it's so graphic and it's so crisp. Let's go with that as the perceived role. We can always fall back on overburdened, over-responsible, but let's stay with the trapped woman when we're evaluating 1 through 5 especially. So when you feel like a trapped woman and actually caught between the independent and the cared for, that's really the trap, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How do you behave today when you feel that way?
Well, I went to when I get frustrated with him or resentful of him for not taking care of me or not being responsible. Yep. I roll my eyes, I get impatient, I get snippy, I criticize him either verbally or non-verbally with my body language. I withdraw. I indulge in self-pity at having to be so responsible. I am unkind when I speak about him to others. Yeah. All right. I put down negative and punishing. Well, that fits. Hope so. Number two. Selfish thoughts. I consider myself superior to him and him inferior. I indulge in self-pity thoughts, and feel irritated when I'm with him. I fantasize about having a more functional spouse, which makes me feel unhappy in my marriage. Yeah. I feel superior and I look down at him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Number 3. How am I dishonest? I'm not accepting reality. I keep wanting him to change. I knew he was this way when I married him. We were together for 10 years before we got married. Just because I'm more organized and decisive, it doesn't mean I'm any better, and it doesn't mean he's inferior. I'm not giving him credit for the times he is productive and he is decisive. I'm so upset about the situation, I'm amplifying the problem and only paying attention to my frustration about the bad times. So I'm getting tunnel vision.
Well, yeah, it's a wonderful articulation. And the key there, the phrase is, I'm not accepting reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was this way before I married him.
Yeah.
He's not going to change.
No.
No, he is not going to change.
No, I know.
Oh, in fact, he's going to get worse.
Oh no, don't say.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you don't get younger and healthier. You get older and unhealthier.
Okay.
Yeah.
I made my day.
Well, again, let's take a look at reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's black. In this case, it's pretty black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in your profession, you know the truth of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number 4, fear.
Let's see. I'm afraid I will always feel trapped under the pressure of having to take care of everything myself and will never feel taken care of. I'll never be in a partnership of equals. And that's not fair because he is my equal. I'm afraid I will eventually drive him away with my judgmental attitude and behaviors.
Yeah. And you made a comment to defend yourself, which is appropriate here, that, oh, no, he is my equal. But you actually don't feel it.
No, you're right.
On the logical level, especially publicly, you would say that, but you don't feel it at all.
I don't. And it interferes with the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And so that may be where you could creatively use the prayer for the removal of resentment to be the prayer for the removal of my condescending attitude, or whatever the words would be that you would want to
No,
use.
I think that's close. I like it.
All right.
It fits. It fits.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although it's focused a little bit on the negative, and I'm much more inclined to recommend that you have a positive term that we're praying for the removal of your condescending attitude and maybe the replacement with
Acceptance.
More than that, something with some feeling.
Respect.
Oh, I like it.
Respect.
A genuine, authentic respect. And I'm coming from that so strongly because you pressed a button in me that reminds me of Dr. Gray's book, Mars and Venus. And in there he said, a man wants respect from other men and from the women in his life. A man absolutely needs respect. And of course, the contrast is, which I was more interested in because I was attempting to rehabilitate my relationship with my wife. Well, what does a woman want? She wants to be cherished.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you might want to adopt that for him. Wow, what a great turnaround that would be. How, not just positive respect, but how do I, no, not how. I want to be transformed to a woman that cherishes her partner. Wow. I love the word. It's so rich.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's very visual. I mean,
Yeah. All right.
It hits deep. Yeah.
Number 5.
Where am I wrong, at fault, or responsible for my feelings or behavior when I feel this resentment? I'm refusing to accept reality and making myself miserable by focusing on the negative rather than the positives of my husband.
Oh, see, that just confirms what I just said about the prayer also. Don't focus on the negative part, although acknowledge it, but focus on the positive part. Yep.
And I said, I'm being childish by indulging in self-pity. I'm being arrogant, critical, and judgmental.
Yeah, all of that's true. And be careful that you're not beating yourself up with it because you're observing you're evaluating. This is the reality. And I need to accept that reality and the reality of who I am. All right. This judgmental, and we'll look at some other words in a minute. So skip 6 and 7 and go to 8. Any additional fears?
Being taken advantage of keeps coming up in my theme.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one.
Number 9.
And abandoned. I mean, those are two themes, being abandoned.
Oh, all right. Number 9.
Number 9,
Character defects, yeah.
so many. Judgmental, critical, self-pity, intolerant, impatient, controlling. I ran out of room on my page, so.
All right. Well, you'll pick that theme up when you go to the step 6, character defects. Intolerant is a good word, and it reminded me of step 10. It says our code. Once we enter the world of the spirit in step 10, our code is love and tolerance. So that's another wonderful positive thing to pray for, a growth in that for you, love and tolerance, especially the tolerance part. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Number 10. What's the benefit or value for you holding this position?
I get to feel superior.
Yeah.
Play the victim, feel important and needed. If I'm needed, I won't be abandoned. I can maintain distance and I won't need to risk intimacy.
Oh, there's a lot there for you to work with, isn't
Oh, yeah.
there?
That's what I said. It takes me about an hour to do these things, and
Yes.
then that's all I can handle is one of these.
Absolutely, 100%. If you're doing it thoroughly, it takes a little bit longer because of the feelings that you engage in, and they exhaust you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing, and it's like, I look at this and who is this person?
Yeah.
Where the heck did she come from?
Yeah. Well, when you take the mask off, that's the person behind the mask.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's already, just doing the work has already started, to bring us a bit closer. I've been very distant for a long time, and I kind of suspected why, but as I do this work, I'm softening a bit.
Nice. Yeah.
It's good.
And so at the top, you said you're the trapped woman, overburdened, over responsible. What's the truth, the realization at the bottom?
I don't even think I did the turnaround. Trapping myself. I don't have to be over responsible. I don't have to take on more of a burden. I tend to do it on purpose. So I trap myself a lot of times.
All right. That's a good insight. Yeah.
And I don't know beyond that. Let's see. Look, I'm trying to make a crisp turnaround, and that's the one that came to me is, I'm not really trapped.
Right. I think that's you've trapped yourself, but underneath that, what's the source of the taking on more responsibility than you either need or want, or burdening yourself in a way that interferes with the quality of your life? Underneath that, there's something, because those are symptoms. That's the smoke. What's the fire? Go ahead.
I think I get, if I feel needed, there's a lot of, I was abandoned by my mom as a child. And so when we did get back together, she left my brother and I with another family for several years when I was 5 years old. And so when we did get back together, I was so intent on taking care of her and pleasing her and making sure I didn't get tossed away again.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like this, if I'm needed, if I'm indispensable, then I won't get left behind. I won't be abandoned. So, I make myself indispensable so that, I don't have to worry about being abandoned.
That's a great insight. I hope you've written that down. I make myself indispensable so I won't be abandoned. That's a fabulous insight, because I was wondering, and I wrote it down. I was going to address it here in a minute, but you addressed it, because it sort of popped out of nowhere toward the end of the 4th column about the use the word abandon. I actually was kind of surprised that it came out, because it hadn't been signaled in any other of your words. And then it became a rather prominent issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like almost that there's some form of trauma that you've experienced there that you're still reacting to.
Oh, yeah.
Have you had any therapy around that?
I have, and it
Right.
hasn't been so prominent as it is when I start digging it up again. I haven't really,
Yeah.
or it's been subtle. I think it's been
Yeah.
subtle in, not wanting to be intimate, not
Yeah.
trusting.
Yeah.
There's still trust issues.
Yeah.
And I've been with him for 20 years. It's like,
Yeah.
I know
Right.
he's not going anywhere, but
Well, yeah, I mean, apparently you don't.
yeah, well, or maybe I'm pushing him away and make it a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, from your lips, yeah, that's right. Exactly, because
Yeah.
that's the potential truth of it. But so have you discussed this with your husband?
He's a psychotherapist. I will.
I was going to say, oh, I didn't know that part, but if you haven't discussed this, what you just said, that crisp, I didn't write it down, but that one sentence that you just
I
said.
make myself indispensable so I won't be abandoned.
Yeah, if you could at some point when you're particularly relaxed and the fire is burning and you're sitting quietly enjoying one another's company, and it would be appropriate, if you could bring that up to explore that with him, or not even explore, share that with him in some form of, well, whatever form comes to mind as to the reason you're doing that. I think that would be a very powerful conversation.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I know I've shared the trapped feeling with him before because he's always trying to help me, and this trapped thing comes up at work too. I feel.
Sure, of course.
Yeah, I have a business and people depend on me, and I have to function there. Yeah, so
Right.
I'm always feeling trapped, and so
Yeah.
I want to be free.
Yeah. And part of that is trusting other people and trusting the universe. My oldest daughter is 30 years sober in AA, and within the last year, when I was talking about my schedule and how busy I am, and I feel so responsible to make sure that I help as many people, and she said, "Dad, just remember to ask God to participate. Don't forget that God's in this, and God may not need as much of your help as you think he does."
I think, these past few years, I haven't been trusting. I've been seeing what's happening around us, and I've lost my belief that things are going to work out okay. So it has taken its toll.
Yeah.
But so I need
it depends also, and you might want to challenge yourself on this, is what does it mean for things to work out okay? That's a rhetorical question.
That means my way, of course.
Oh, it does, doesn't it? Yes. We would all define it that way.
That's sure. Right. What else could it mean?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, that was great.
I just started on my fear inventory, and I was going over the assignment 18 worksheet, and I just had a question about of clarification on some of the directions.
Yes.
So under number 2, it says take one of your fears and put it on a separate piece of paper, and then there's an A section and a B section, and A starts, ask why do you have this fear, and then goes through kind of this whole layering approach.
First, wait, I think maybe, let me just clarify, see where you're at with this, but you're looking at the worksheet, and that's not the work from the big book. That's supplemental work. So
No, I'm looking at your assignment from the assignment package.
All right, go ahead.
And so, yeah, there's it says take one of.
All right, well, rather than read to me my assignments, tell me what you did.
Well, so the first time I did it, like I asked, why do I have this fear? And I kind of, it seemed like a more logical approach to it.
All right.
Which I know you kind of.
Did you try to go back to the feelings part of it?
And then, yeah, there's that's section B. Why do you have this fear? And if that came true, what would happen next? What would happen next? And that was the feeling part that I understood, but I was
Yep.
just trying to get understanding of, like, because both A and B say, why do I have this fear? So I was just confused on that. Is there two kind of layering processes where I peel back, or is it just more the feeling thing where if
Yeah,
this happened, what would happen?
The why I have it may in fact be needing to be changed or fine-tuned, because it has a tendency to push us up into our head.
Mhm.
It's really what fear comes up when I articulate my answer to the question, what fear comes up? And then I
Okay.
put that down when, if that would happen. All right.
Mhm.
I answered the question, what fear do I have, and why do I have it? And then, or what will happen next if my worst fear is realized, what happens?
Mhm.
And so I lose my job, I lose my apartment, let's say. All right, then if I lose my apartment, what fear comes up?
Okay.
I'll be on the street. Well, what fear comes up then? I think it's a much better keeping yourself in the feelings rather than pushing you up into your head. Does that help?
Yeah. And yeah, that answers that question quite clearly. So thank you.
Alcoholic. I'd like to share column 3 and column 4 thing with you.
Yeah.
Mine is resenting myself, which can be a little tricky. Some of the questions are a little difficult to get to.
Very difficult. So have you done a number of ones on other people or circumstances?
Yes, I have.
All right. So go ahead. And what's your resentment?
Okay. I resent myself for not being able to control my anger.
All right. And so who are you? Self-esteem.
I see myself as a good man who is trying to be an exemplary man, in complete control of anger at all times and never exhibiting anger at any time.
Yeah. And your fear is?
I'm an angry man at all times.
All right. And read pride, please.
Okay. Others see me as a Zen-like master of calmness and benevolence.
Nice. Very nice. And your fear?
That they will see, I'm in utter fear that they will see me as a very angry man at all times. That
Yeah.
I'm really.
Yeah. All right. So go over to the 4th column. What's your perceived role?
Perceived role is I am a out of control, angry a-hole.
We don't need the a-hole word, but
Okay.
I'm an out of control, angry man.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, out of control, angry man. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. So, when you feel this out of a memory or actually just after an event, out of control, angry man, how do you behave?
Sometimes it can get worse, and depending on the situation I'm in, perhaps I can calm myself, and usually, and I'll get to it. Some of the other questions there, it's some of my anger is exhibited during some issues with my wife.
Are you saying that that's an occasion that frequently generates this rage, or is it generally dispersed throughout your contact with people and circumstances?
It is most often exhibited in interactions with my wife.
Oh, so that changes the dynamic a little bit. All right. So it's not a general experience, it's a very specific experience in your relationship with your wife. How long have you been married?
27 years.
And did this begin at the beginning, or is there a particular time that you see it rise up and be present?
Actually, interestingly enough, it probably became, well, near the end of the time when we were both drinking, which is, we've both been sober for about 2 years and 3 months or so.
All right.
Once we got sober, and then things calmed down for a while, and then it seems like the sobriety brought into focus a lot of the problems that we were having. And then we got there. Sometimes I got really angry in a worse way while being sober.
Sure. Is she in a 12-step program?
We're both in your 12-step workshop.
Oh, all right. So the answer is yes. All right, good. So what is when you find yourself in this anger, rage situation with your wife, how do you behave? The actual experience.
Okay, this is one of the things that is a little difficult for me, because what I'm behaving while I'm being angry is I'm behaving in an angry way. It never gets to be necessarily violent in any way with her.
Well, let's not try to judge it. Let's just try to answer the question.
Okay. All right. I would say that when I'm being angry, I have a hard time separating the resentment from the anger. But in general, I'm just kind of, I may yell, or I may raise my voice. There's been times when I'm thinking I'm trying to calm down my wife, and I will kind of like try to hug her or grab her or something like that, but not to be violent or strike her or anything like that, but sort of.
So you're either yelling at her or trying to control her.
Yes.
Okay. Number two.
I never thought of it that way, but that's probably true.
Well, that's what you said, but you couldn't hear it, and I could hear you not hearing it.
Okay.
Number two, where's the unhealthy thinking there?
Okay, the number two, thinking about myself when I feel this resentment. I feel ashamed for being an angry fool. Feel ashamed of it.
Well, okay, but that's probably appropriate, healthy. So that's good that you have a conscience about it, but that's not an answer to the question.
Okay.
The question is, what is the unhealthy thinking source of your rage?
The unhealthy, I guess I'm thinking that.
Well, let's answer the question. Why do you get into a rage with her? What is she doing or saying or not doing or not saying that presses your button?
Well, it can be different, but I guess
of course.
In general, it's perhaps, I think she should be behaving in a certain way, and she isn't, and so it may be the same thing that you're saying. I can't control control her, and
yeah. No, she's not behaving according to your expectations. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's she should be different. Wait. Your unconscious belief here, I believe it's unconscious, is she should be different.
It could be also that it is that she doesn't believe me, and I may be, in some cases, I am being dishonest, but not in all cases, I think. Well,
you are very well defended. You are so wanting to look good to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of my.
By the way, you don't look good right now. So let's just lean into it.
Okay, let's go on. Yeah, one of my other resentments of myself is that I am very defensive. So okay.
Oh, okay. And where are you being dishonest?
Okay. In general, the dishonesty I was talking about has to do with, it could be a number of things that perhaps we are discussing, and I am not being completely truthful about them. And the way I answered it on
listen how you're answering the question. Oh my God. Oh, I'm not being completely truthful. You're lying.
Right.
Why can't you say that? Because you want to look good here.
Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
But she says to me too.
Well, I bet she does. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So I'm dishonest because I lie because why do you lie?
For probably the reason you said, I don't want to look bad, or that's kind of I don't maybe I don't really know what the answer.
All right. I'm very okay with that. Absolutely wonderful that you're acknowledging that. Number 4, what are you afraid of?
I'm afraid that I always will be an angry person, and I won't be able to control my anger.
I won't change. Okay. All right. That works. How about number 5?
Okay, so my current reaction to this is I should feel bad about resenting myself and about being angry, and then I should feel bad about lying.
Well, that's not an answer to the question. It says, where are you responsible for generating this reaction to your wife? What is it that you would like to produce in that situation with your wife?
I would like to produce a happy and good relationship and marriage.
And tell me, what would a happy and good relationship with your wife look like? How would she behave? Be honest.
Let's see. Well,
what would be the ideal that would really soothe you in a relationship discussion with your wife? How would she behave that would be meeting your standards to support your?
Okay, I guess maybe it would be that, because sometimes I think she feels my motivations for a lot of things that I do are related to some very poor character.
Meaning what you're talking around it. Tell us what you're talking about.
Well, I guess I don't really know how to answer your question.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You're not willing to, but you do know how to answer it.
Okay,
you need to use plain and simple language and not the defensive, colorful language that you're so used to using.
Okay, well, maybe I just have to be painfully honest at all times.
Well, what would that look like in a situation that you have in mind right now with her getting what you wanted? What would painfully honest look like?
Well, sometimes I'm not sure that, okay, I really don't know how to answer the question.
Well, you okay, all right.
I mean, I would be, okay, I'm saying.
But what do you want? No, what do you want that you're not getting from your wife?
All right, I want her to be happy in our marriage.
And what would she do that would make her happy in relationship to you?
What would she do?
Yeah, that you want her to do to be happy.
Sometimes I feel if we're having an argument, I feel like I'd like her to let go of some past thing that I've done that was wrong, and we get into these arguments about things.
No, that's where I'm going with it. And you want her to change, to accommodate you.
Okay.
Right.
All right. That okay.
You want to be forgiven.
I want to be forgiven. That's right.
You want her to change.
Yes. Okay.
You want to be right and seen how you want to be seen.
Okay. All right. I don't mind. Actually, this is the truth. I will frequently own up to me being wrong. So I'm not hard nosed about having to be right. So
Right.
there are frequently do I agree with her and say, yes, you're right about this, about that.
All right.
So I'm not insistent on being right.
All right.
I am willing to compromise and to admit my errors and the things where I have gone astray.
All right. So the answer to number 5 then might be that you want her to change a little more quickly than she's changing, and to release you from your previous bad behavior.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, you're
I
build on what you're saying.
That I mean, I think that's accurate what you said.
Yeah.
I've never thought necessarily exactly in those terms, but
well, you're both relatively new in the program, so there's been a lot of damage prior to the 2 years, and then probably in the last 2 years as you're both thawing out and learning to navigate in your communication and your behavior very differently. And so,
that's very true. In fact, I think a big problem is our communication. We don't really know how to communicate.
I don't know about her, but I'm having a difficult time having a straight conversation with you.
Okay.
You're what's called circumlocuting. You talk around issues. You keep them very broad and general. You don't zero in and use hard language. You keep it very soft.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't argue with that.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I guess it could be that it is hard to and maybe I'm circumlocuting again, is that it's kind of hard to talk about a resentment about myself about something like anger, but I think you're accurate in your assessment of me.
We're just attempting to explore to see what resonates with you. Skip 6 and 7 and go to 8. Any additional fears?
Okay, this you probably already have gathered. I'm afraid my anger and resentment will damage my relationship with my wife.
Yeah, okay. All right. Any other fears there?
That's the only one
That's fine. No, I'm just checking. I don't want to move forward artificially. Number 9, character defects.
I feel I've been self-centered, immature, intolerant, prideful, overly tense, and these things are spilling over into the relationship.
Yeah. All right. Number 10, what's the benefit to you for these outbursts?
Okay, I guess one of the other character defects is the dishonesty, as we've talked about also.
Okay, yeah. I put down controlling and unrealistic.
Okay.
Well, you prompted it when you said occasionally you grab her to try to calm her down. I'm sure that really works really well.
No, it doesn't work very well at all.
No, I was being sarcastic.
I know you were, but I tell you that what really happens is not that, and it may be associated with you know, a caregiver I had, which was my grandmother, was really brought me up. And whenever I needed to be healed, she would hold me and grab me. And
Nice. That's what grandmothers do. Yeah, very nice. Yeah.
so,
But she's coming from a place of love, not having a volcanic rage inside of her.
right.
Yeah, right. All right. So number 10, what did you write for an answer?
Okay, I think I realize I am beginning to have.
It's the number 10 is the benefit to you for holding the rage.
Okay. I can pretend I want to become a better person.
Oh, all right. Yeah. It's like I'm indignant that you don't see how much progress I've made. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. We're also human, right?
Okay.
All right. And what's the realization then? At the top, you said
An out
out
of
of control angry man.
Okay, I think I've been pushing that dimmer switch a little bit and becoming less angry.
I'm happy for you, but that's not an answer to the question.
Okay.
You're an out of control angry man. Is your perceived role? What's the real truth at the bottom of the source of your anger?
I need to work on my character defects.
No, we're not looking for a solution. We're looking for the source of the problem. What is the fuel for the fire? You're not an out of control angry man. Truly, that's a cover for something. Are you afraid that she will leave you? Are you afraid that she won't accept you? Are you afraid that
I am afraid that our marriage will break apart, that my behavior will destroy the marriage. I mean, but
but the anger is coming out of.
Okay, you know, I don't know, Herb.
All right. Let me try something. You said I'm an out of control angry man, and the truth is, I'm a controlling man who gets angry to attempt to control.
Okay. All right.
Because you want her to behave a certain way, to feel a certain way, to be a certain way.
Okay, I guess maybe I'm dishonest in thinking that I don't feel like I'm a controlling person, but in this regard, you know, you're right. And so I'm a controlling man that becomes angry in an attempt to control her.
That's like a default energy that in some way you've learned, probably incorrectly and in an unhealthy way, that will in fact get you the result that you want. And of course, as you're experiencing it, it gets you the opposite of what you want.
Yeah.
Well,
you know,
so you're not an out of control man. You're an unconsciously. Oh, I like this. You're unconsciously controlling.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's perfect, because I was just going to say, I've never felt that I, you know, consciously.
Exactly.
And also, I don't think that being angry has ever helped me control anybody either.
Right. Yes, it's not a tool that works very well, right?
No, it doesn't work at all. And so I wouldn't recommend it, but.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for working with me on that. That was a tough duty, but it's always more subtle and complicated to work on a resentment towards yourself. But you did a really nice job.
Okay. Thank you. And perhaps it has there's an underlying thing there with my dishonesty and lying is probably not helping.
Yeah, well, that would be a character defect, would be the manipulative person.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah, you want to look good and have your own way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, let's conclude with the Serenity Prayer. It's always a wonderful embracing of what we really want is harmony. But we need to navigate reality. What can I influence? What can't I influence? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. Wisdom to know the difference. Thanks, everybody.